Hillary, please talk. Speaking of budgets and valuing services, Hillary Morgridge is here to share her
Hello,
knowledge
everyone.
with you. Thanks.
Awesome. So I am Hillary Morgridge. I have about 12 years now working with nonprofits in a CPA capacity. So I spent about 10 years working in public accounting and in for a nonprofit. And I ended up having this, like, I am working with over 250 nonprofits. I touch them one day a year. I'm like, hey, you guys need more help. You're coming to us for your Form 990 or to get an audit done, and things are not clean. So I kind of got sick of this turn and burn of nonprofit work and said, what if I worked with nonprofits and kind of got in the dirt with them and helped them through all of this back office stuff that so often they don't have internal capacity for. So I wanted to talk today about kind of the things I see over and over again with these nonprofits that come to me that are always not always a problematic, but could be done better. And I think part of that is nonprofits have this unique issue. They are creating their financials for three different groups of people. You need your internal budgeting and how do we pay for things and our internal reporting. And then you have your grantors who want to see things one way. And then you have your board of directors. So you are creating books that really need to be multifaceted. And so I wanted to talk about how to do that. It's going to be pretty high level because I want to have plenty of time for discussion and questions. So if there's any questions, please just make note, and I'm excited to talk about them after. You can go to the next slide. So we're going to get right into it. So one thing I see is, who here knows about TechSoup? Okay, so TechSoup is a resource that I highly recommend to every nonprofit. It gets you way discounted Microsoft hardware, computers, QuickBooks, for example. So it's silly the number of nonprofits that I see spending $90, $150 a month on QuickBooks, when if you're a nonprofit, you have a 501c3, that's $80 for the year. So little things like that, just saving money. And desktop no longer supported as of last week. So if anyone you know is still using desktop, they will no longer be able to get help from QuickBooks. So make sure you get migrated. And the QuickBooks team, if you have to call them up, is fantastic. But I am a big proponent of QuickBooks for nonprofits. So I wanted to talk about the key to good books, and I come back to three words: accuracy, consistency, and detail. This is someone that came to me with not good books, not beautiful books. So they were accurate, and one thing is you can always link your bank accounts, pull all that data in, make it easier. They were consistent, but they had very little detail. So they came to me and they took their expenses that they had were in 6 categories: personnel, contractors, fixed expenses, technology, and other. And so I went to the first board meeting. I always like to meet the boards of the organizations I'm working on and say, what do you need? And they're like, well, what's fixed expenses? And I said, I don't know. Can you tell me that? What are you putting in there? And they're like, oh, like our IT person. Like, okay, no. That tells me nothing. Other program expenses tells me nothing. And then how do you budget if you're not being detailed? If you don't know what this $2,400 is, how are you going to say, we need to make sure we have the money for Zoom and for any of those little things? So I think being accurate, linking your bank accounts so that everything's getting pulled in, you're not missing anything, reconciling your books every month on every account. So I have clients that are like, yeah, I pulled in my bank account. Isn't that great? And I'm like, well, what about you? You said you have credit cards. And they're like, well, I didn't know I could connect every account and tie out to the tax return. So when you get your 990 done, if you have an independent person doing that, make sure to ask the question, did you make journal entries to get to the numbers on your tax return? because I work with some clients where they don't have the funding to have me work with them every month. So once a year, they have me review all their books, fix their mistakes, fix that reconciling discrepancies account where they were just like, well, I tried to reconcile every month, but there was this number, but there's a button you hit and it just reconciles anyway. For the love of all accountants, do not hit that button. So please be sure to be accurate, be consistent. If you decide this is how you're doing something and that is an acceptable accounting practice, keep doing it. Don't be like, well, I put it in this account, but I was thinking maybe we could put it here, or I don't remember where I put it. Be consistent. It's so hard to budget if you're not being consistent in your accounting policies and procedures. And yes, be detailed. I'd rather see more accounts than just see other. No other. Okay. So grant management. So who here does use QuickBooks, or their nonprofit uses QuickBooks or something? Okay, couple. Who here uses projects? Okay, I'm so excited to tell you guys about this. So projects is a newer feature, and this is something that you can use to track every single grant that your organization gets. And this is so multifaceted in its benefits. So this is a little snapshot. I tried to block out the information so I wasn't giving away the client details, but they have, 20 different grants they're tracking, each with different start dates, different end dates, different budgets. Every single grant, we track their income from the grant. So reimbursable grants, we're not going to see that income piece right away. That'll track after, but all their costs. And the amazing piece is, especially if you're having to invoice, if you're sending a CDPHE invoice for this grant, you click into that project, it pulls up last month, you have your financial report of what you're requesting for that grant. So when you're doing this, and I'm happy to discuss, I told Casey, if after this, if anyone that's attending virtually or in person wants to have a 30-minute chat, an hour-long chat, just because I love talking about books, I'm happy to have like a free talk about any of these topics that you guys want to dig in further on. But projects can give you the ability to make grant tracking so easy. It gives you that financial reporting. When you get to the end, we are almost there on this one. We're going to close it out. I'm going to know exactly how every penny of that grant was spent. I'm going to be able to pull a grant report. I'm going to close it so none of that changes. It is a great tool. And with that, talking about grants, there is, with multiple funding sources for nonprofits, one thing to think about is that there is guidance on what priority you use your grants. So if you have an expense, your Greg's salary, executive director salary, there might be 3 different funding sources that could go to if he's got multiple grants that are allowing for that. You always have to use your most restricted funds first. So that can be restricted by budget, restricted, if it's CDPHE, let's say, you probably have a pretty specific budget. And yes, you can sometimes get budget changes, but that's probably your most restrictive. So we look there. How much of his budget are we allowed to put there? Great, 30%. We're going to put that there. Then let's say you have 2 grants. One's that Walton Family Foundation, and let's say Mediero Foundation throws some money in. But the Walton Family Foundation, that grant, that its end date is next month, and you still got 10,000 more to spend. But they were just like, here's 100,000. Here's 100,000 in your account. So another way to look at restriction is time. So you have these specific budgets, you've got time restrictions. So you kind of want to think about your grants in that order. If you can put a portion of Greg's salary to that CDPHE, great. If you can then put the rest of it to that Walton Family Foundation because you want to make sure that your grant report shows you've spent every dollar, put it there. And then if needed, it can go over to that Mighty Arrow Foundation because hopefully they're giving you some operating funds. So always think about things most restrictive first, going down. Financials for your board. So talking about that third piece, the giving your board good financials and giving them tools. So this is something that I've created that every month the nonprofits I work with have this to provide to their board. It's my little financial snapshot. And what I think it does is it gives you that one pager where you can look like you really know finance with just a few key statistics that are super easy. So we're giving you, here is our current performance year to date versus budget. How far in are we? You know, like revenue, okay, now I can see their revenue's a little behind for the year. Expenses are outpacing revenue. That percentage is higher. So I can look at these things and just see really quick, how are we doing? And then down here, I just love some good statistics. And I think these three in particular can make you look like you understand your financials and your cash flow, and you can reassure your board that you have funds to operate. You know, where is your salary coming from in 6 months? Okay, well, I can tell you that this nonprofit, they can operate for 104 more days without getting new grant funds. And I'm comfortable with that. I always say greater than 90 days. You want to have at least 90 days in there. But this organization, they're getting new grants every month. It's just, it's not a worry for me. I have organizations that they're 400 days currently because they got, you know, 3 million in HUD funding that is for a project. And so it just depends, but just know, like, you can look up these three things: current ratio, operating intervals, daily cash burn. They're really easy to do and to tell your board just with a quick glance. You don't have to be a big finance person, but you can say, we're spending on average $4,900 a day to operate. We have 104 days that we can operate with our current cash reserves. And this is how many times we could pay our current bills with the cash that we have. So I think this is something, and I'm happy to give like the template to this if anyone wants it, so they can look really fancy with their boards. This is a great tool to know how you're doing. And then I just wanted to touch on, so what I've done, the Morgridge Accounting Solutions has brought on more than just accounting. What I've kind of built is that full back office. So we now have an HR consultant that can come in. So we have people that have been volunteer organizations and suddenly have employees for the first time. And they're like, well, like, what do I need to do? What insurance do I need? Now I need to think about workers' comp. Now I need to think about an employee handbook. What policies are required by the state? What, you know, or they're applying for a grant, and that grant might require cybersecurity insurance. So you never know what's going to come across your path. So finding people, consultants that will work with nonprofits to help you with those human resource needs. But insurance, if you don't have it for your nonprofit, you should. There's multiple types you should have. Director and officer insurance, general liability insurance, especially if you're going to host any events or like bring community members together for an event. You need to make sure that your liability policy is going to cover those type of things. There's newer types of insurance like cybersecurity insurance. I had a client get hacked this past year. They were the type of person, like, all their passwords were the same and they never changed them. And they got hacked, and a hacker sent an email. They were receiving a $1.5 million grant from the Colorado Health Foundation. And we had sent over our ACH information, which she didn't send on the secure portal I told her to. She just emailed it. Well, the hackers emailed the Colorado Health Foundation and said, just kidding, we actually changed our bank account information. Here's where you should wire the money. So I'm watching the bank account every day saying, where is this $1.5 million? And I go back and Colorado Health Foundation is like, we sent it. And I was like, can you just confirm the information? Luckily, the bank of the fraudster flagged it. They flagged this $1.5 million coming into a personal account from a health foundation. They stopped it. So I had already reached out to the police and it was the whole thing, but it was just one of those, like, if that transfer had happened, they could have been out that funding. So insurance for things like that is out there, and you should talk with an insurance broker that works with nonprofits. There are multiple, even just in the Denver area, I know multiple that work with nonprofits, and you want to talk to that broker and ask them about how many nonprofits do you work with? What needs do you see? Watershed communities, what things should I know about? Because you never know. I had another nonprofit that they had a CFO that had a great resume, all these things. Turns out he was not a CPA. He had lied about everything. He embezzled $100,000. And they came to us after this all happened and said, what do we do? So just real life stories of little nonprofits in Colorado that experience these things. So know that it does happen. So know that insurance, important. Make sure you have it. Lots of insurance. It's hard because so often you're in the nitty gritty of the program work you're doing that you're not thinking about risk management, and it's important. So I think that's high level what I wanted to talk about today. I will bring it back to Casey so she can start maybe some of this discussion. Okay.
This is
Go ahead,
Uh,
Diane. Go ahead.
okay. May I ask? I raised my hand, but I wasn't sure if you're going to the room first. And thank you. This is wonderful. I'm looking forward to seeing the recording to watch again. That Microsoft projects, because I've worked in QuickBooks. I work I use spreadsheets a lot to track. And when you get you were talking about multi-funding tracking, and I was just curious, and I want to think it's going to be a yes. But in Microsoft projects, does that tracking for funding, could you also integrate tracking for reporting? Because you know how every grant you get, quarterly this, monthly that, does it also serve that in that way, or can you integrate them?
So that is actually, it is through QuickBooks. So it's QuickBooks projects, and it is a thing you have to turn on in QuickBooks. So it's like in settings, you have to say, I want to track projects. I wish they turned it on for everyone.
That's fabulous to know.
Yes, and it is so like I had the 4 different projects up there. Once you click into one, you can pull as much detail you want financially. So I always work with my clients, just say, what is your reporting schedule for each grant? And then we'll pull the financials and send it over to them so they can build their narrative with the financials that we've recorded as part of that narrative.
Perfect. And so I guess that financial snapshot you had, which somebody in the chat room said, can we get that template? I'm with her. Whoever said that, I'm with you. But with the financial snapshot, was that from the QuickBooks project then? Is that also?
No, that is just my accountant brain wanting to make things understandable for other people.
Gotcha. Okay.
That's just something I built in Excel. So pretty much anyone will be able to use that.
Excellent. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Hillary.